Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, and we'll be shifting focus onto a very, very important topic. I think it's one that we covered extensively yesterday. If you can just take a look at our various social media pages, you'll know that we were out in Johannesburg yesterday, Newtown, where say signatures or comments from the public were put forward for the renaming of Sandton Drive to Leila Khaled Drive. And it seems we are just one step closer to realizing that. And to speak to us a bit more on this is two people that are very, very integral in making sure that that dream is realized. Is Mohamed from SAMNET and also Alie who's from Africa for Palestine. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum to all of your listeners.
Good morning to your listeners and thank you for having us.
Alie, I think maybe I'll just start off with you. Yesterday in Newtown, a very, very important moment, a watershed moment into us ultimately, realizing that dream of the renaming of Sandton Drive to Leila Khaled. From the perspective of Africa for Palestine, how difficult was this journey to ultimately get to where we are, and how momentous was yesterday's event?
We are very happy with the events of yesterday. We are very happy with the turnout of Johannesburg residents and South Africans in general that responded to the call to support the renaming of Sandton Drive to Leila Khaled Drive. We submitted in around the area of 73,000 physical submissions to the city of Johannesburg. We are not considering at this time in our own audit the online submissions, which we think are way much more than the physical submissions that we made. So we were very happy with the events of yesterday. We are very happy with how people responded to the call to support the naming of Sandton.
And to you, Mohamed, from an advocacy solidarity organization's point of view, why do you think it's so important, to rename Sandton Drive? I think it's a very, very, important, road here in South Africa. It stands on Africa's richest square mile, and to have the name of Leila Khaled attached to it, how significant would that be going forward?
I think we need to activate ourselves. We need to recognize that naming of streets, and yes, there are vanity cases, and there have been some strange incidents, not just here but elsewhere in the world. But at the same time, it is critically important if we do not leave a legacy for the future generations to recognize and understand the people who have made a substantial contribution towards issues. Fighting for justice, fighting against oppression, fighting against colonialism, fighting, for people who don't have a voice. I think if we don't start that process, and if we don't do that and undo, many of the wrongs that we have seen in the past, then we become, people without a history. So this is part of the historical record. This is part of the process of decolonization. This is the part of the recognition of solidarity of South Africa with all of the people who have stood up against oppression, against apartheid, all of the people who have come and who have gone before us. I mean, in Durban, we have streets named after Che Guevara. There are streets named after South African liberation struggle icons. And these are people who at times were controversial, but looking back on them and looking back on what they did, why they did it, and how they went about doing it, it actually is important to recognize their contribution. So it may not be popular. I mean, if we tried to name things after only people who everyone agreed with 100%, we would then be in a position where we would never name anything. So we have to understand that this is, as our brother Alie said, this is actually a popular support. What we do need to do, and from an activist perspective, what we need to do is learn from this process. If you have to do a Google search, unfortunately, the links that come up are all of the articles against the renaming. And we've got to ask ourselves, why is that? What is the narrative that is being put forward, and what have we done about it? We've seen a lot of people who are very, very passionate, who are very, very vociferous on WhatsApp groups. But when we ask people to say, please go out there and make a call and take action, it's been very slow. Alhamdulillah. And, we're really grateful that with the efforts of people like Africa for Palestine, organizations like COSATU, political parties, etc., this issue hasn't been swept under. It hasn't been overtaken. It hasn't been, lost. We've been able to use social media and activate. But there's a lesson in this, that if we want to be active, we've got to make the effort. We can't wait for others to dictate the narrative. And Leila Khaled is an icon. We also need to be able to educate our youth and our communities about why someone like Leila Khaled is an icon. We think very much, I think very often in the context of our experience. We've got to realize that when she took up the freedom fight, it was, in the 1960s and into the 1970s. And those were critical times. People did not know about the challenges of Palestine. People did not know the issue. And one of the things that is commonly put forward in the counter argument is the definition of terrorist. Well, we've got to consider that no one was actually harmed. No passengers were harmed in either of the incidents that involved her. The incidents were there to raise awareness. They were part of an overall strategy to try and get the message out. And we're seeing, unfortunately, that despite those efforts, it still persists, the messaging still persists, that anyone who wants to talk about the rights of the people of Palestine, who want to talk about the people who are oppressed across the world, the easiest thing to do nowadays is to throw labels at them to try and undermine the cause of the people who are suffering oppression and injustice. So this is part of a bigger process. It's not just renaming a street as in, something that is a vanity project, as, some of our political parties have put forward and have claimed that they've submitted, 5,000 signatures or 6,000 signatures. This is substantial. And if we don't do this, recognizing contributors to the struggle of not just the Palestinian people, but the overall struggle of across the world, including the one that we had to go through as South Africa, then we are failing as a society.
No, definitely. Alie, I want to come back to you, and I want to touch on a point that Mohamed made, the issue of addressing criticism. We have critics like Leah Potgieter from the Democratic Alliance, who argues that, such gestures are merely symbolic and do not address pressing local issues. How do you respond to this kind of viewpoint?
We believe it's ludicrous, and we've spoken at length about it. The transformation process of South Africa, the decolonization project of South Africa, includes, amongst many things, renaming historical sites, renaming important structures and memorabilia in the names and in the legacy of our struggle. So this is not something that is sucked. When the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, that followed after apartheid collapsed, it recommended that the new government undertake this responsibility. So it's not something that we suck. It's not something that's useless, and I think it's insulting that people from a historically racist white party of apartheid, the DA, get to tell us what's important in our own history and heritage and what is not. Just to put matters into perspective, when the municipality in Pretoria wanted to change the municipality's name to Tshwane, the DA refused and took them to court. There were a number of streets in eThekwini municipality that were in the renaming process. The DA took them to court. In Tzaneen, which is now known as Louis Tirhad, which is now known as Makado, the DA refused that change and wanted to take it to court. So these are people who want to preserve a colonial culture and colonial history of this country. They love it when we pass through streets like Malan, Jan Smarts, Verwoerd. You know, this is the streets that they want us to keep. Streets that are named after apartheid murderers, people who killed South African people mercilessly. So we don't take them serious. We don't take in account what they have to say about us. This is how we preserve our own history. Leila Khaled is an integral part of that history. She is a sister and comrade in arms against the common enemy. Uh, Similar to how Nelson Mandela is. There's streets everywhere in the world named after Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela doesn't live in Ramallah, but there's
mm,
Nelson Mandela Square there. So we are not going to be told by them how to commemorate our heroes, both locally and internationally. We will never ever listen to a historically white racist party that tells us what to do and what not to do with our responsibility as as a democratic and free people.
Mohammed, let me come back to you. Beyond, just the renaming of streets, which I think is very, very important, as we have already alluded to. What other actions do you think are necessary to further foster solidarity with the Palestinian cause within South Africa? I think just a few weeks ago we are commemorating a year since the 7th of October, and it doesn't seem like a ceasefire is anywhere near sight. What more can be done regarding this issue?
Just before I get into that, I think one of the things that we need to look at is symbolism is important. We forget
Mm,
that just a few months ago, the DA put out an advert which was burning the South African flag, and that was symbolic, in their view. So it can sometimes be quite hypocritical when people take a position on one thing and the other. They've we've not. This is the first time that this has become so far down the line. We've had the experience in Itequini where Higginson Highway was meant to be changed to Yasser Arafat Drive, and we've had the same objections from the same people, for over, it's getting on to 20 years. So this is important. It is, critical, and it is one step. And as you asked, what else can we do? So whether it is, the symbolism of something of a renaming, or whether it is people taking, following the call to action, we have been raising the issue that people need to, and maybe this campaign has activated people. We need our public to go out there and start campaigns pushing for action against Israel's participation in, for example, FIFA. FIFA have been very quick, and we're very quick to take action in other instances where countries have been invaded, where there have been, crimes against humanity, where there is government interference. But it seems that that does not apply to Israel. It's been kicked down the road 3 times already in the last year. And they cannot say that this does not have an impact. There is submissions to them, but now we need the public to step up and to step up that campaign. We need people to talk to medical and professional organizations locally and abroad to say, what are you doing? What are our universities doing? We've got universities that have also done that. They've kicked the issue down the road, much like the renaming of Leila Khaled Drive. It goes on for years and years and years because people are trying to find a way to avoid having to deal with the truth. And we cannot, considering especially what has happened in the last year and what is still happening in the last few weeks. The other issues we've got to address is in the same vicinity. We have now found a South African youth who is actively involved in the genocide in Gaza. This is documented. This is recorded not by an external person, but people within his own unit who is coming from a school in South Africa. And we are not addressing that. So we've got to start going beyond. And it's not that the protests are not critical or important, but we've got to now go a step further. We've got to start taking this into concrete action, and we've got to be able to use this and put pressure on the different people across the globe, not just South Africa. Obviously, it starts at home, and we must acknowledge and we must, recognize that in South Africa we have an incredible amount of diversity. We've got incredible tolerance for different views. We have the right to express ourselves freely. But that freedom of expression comes with the responsibility for us to be able to speak out for those who are suffering, for those who are voiceless, for the women and children, abroad and locally. It is our humanity. And until we can show the next generation that that is what we are, what do we expect of our children? So it's a responsibility upon every one of us to start looking out not just to the issues around, the tacit elements of, well, we feel about this, we kind of want to pray and make dua about it. We want to actually get the message out, and we want to share on WhatsApp. We now have to start doing. And there is a massive difference when an organization, whether it be FIFA or a medical council or a university, starts hearing from its alumni or its professional members or professors, or from the perspective of municipal workers or from unions. When we activate, we will start seeing a difference. And that is what this campaign is about. Every battle may not necessarily be won, but every battle is important, and we can take what we focus on. So we very often call on people who have a passion for sport. Maybe it's tennis, maybe it is athletics or gymnastics or whatever it may be. Speak to your organizations, use your voice, get involved in them, start making an effort to go beyond just what very often we comfortable with, in terms of our social media. And we've got to start writing letters to the press, and we've got to be able to get this to infiltrate or to filter through our entire society, so that this is never again. We must not be silent. And I think that that's the activist message, that Leila Khaled Drive renaming is one critical step, and it is a case study to us on how we get our messaging out, what is the message, and whether we can get the activation of people and the public, and whether the public are going to now move beyond the rhetoric and into the action space.
Mohamed, I would like to stay with you, and if maybe we can just, diverge a bit and focus on that point that you made about, the 22-year-old man from Sandton. There's been a lot of debate on social media, particularly on the fact that he was named, and also his place of residency was also named. Some are saying, this is dangerous. What if there are targets to his family? What do you make of this? What do you make of the naming and shaming of South Africans who are currently serving in the IDF? Is it something that should be done, or we should just, point them out as numbers and stats because of fear of what those are saying could ultimately happen to them?
We would never support doxing, where you start going out and giving people's personal address and telephone numbers or information of that sort. That obviously is not acceptable, and that is wrong, and that is dangerous, and that applies to whether it is a person who's an activist on an issue of the environment, or someone who's talking about having political views that may be different to yours. That's not acceptable. However, this is an instance where this has been it's in the public interest. It is critical, not just locally but globally. It does actually infringe on the issue of South African law. Are South Africans going to be permitted to participate in what the South African government has called and submitted to the ICJ, and the ICJ has recognized, that there is a sufficient case for this in a genocide? What is the consequence? And we cannot hide that. So we've got to also start saying, well, if this is a mature adult, this isn't a child, this is an adult, and like any other public interest and an issue of media and news, there is a consequence to the choices that people make, especially if they are now celebrated and being celebrated, and the information has come through investigative journalism. So it's not something where it has come through, someone just kind of sharing it as gossip. This is investigative, credible journalism. So from that perspective, the naming of the person is important. And we've got to be able to, once we do know that, we've got to now address the underlying issues. The issue has been raised before. We've had a school in Cape Town. Hertzia School, which publicly were found to present and proudly acknowledge a few years ago that, if I'm correct, something like 22% of their students serve in the Israeli Defense Force. Now, if they are doing that and they are actually putting that forward as an objective or as an achievement, then we've got to start asking, what is the accountability for people who are actually engaging and encouraging people to participate in violence, in an illegal occupation, and now in a genocide? So we've got to start tackling these issues. We've got to do it with respect and with the reasonable concerns. We don't want it to become something that is violent or has any negative impact. But the choices that the people make to go out there and participate in what is being recognized as a genocide and to celebrate that is something of concern. And we've got to go back to the schools and we've got to start asking questions of the administrators, of our legislators, and the people responsible for our schools to say, is this acceptable? It is not acceptable if any institution, educational institution, working with children to be influencing them to participate in violent war crimes in other parts of the world that are destructive. If we are not going to address that, and this is another area of activism, whether we've got to do it from the perspective of the existing legislation, whether we do this from the perspective of new legislation, whether we do this from the perspective of our media and our communications, and how we address this is something we need to do. And the Hertzia School issue was raised. We did it as SAMNET, as did many other organizations. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, at the very least. So if we are not tackling issues at the root cause, which is where this incident's not just about the young man who is in the occupation and in the assault on Gaza. And it's not that he is just some a border guard. He's actively involved in what is one of the most elite and most proactive units, and he was celebrated for being the first kill, if I understand and remember correctly, the first kill from his unit. That same unit is celebrating that they are shooting civilians. Now, that's something which the administrators of the school, the board of the school, the people who are the teachers at the school, and the students at that school need to actually address. It's not any different from the very same school that he has come from, sanctioning their head pupil for taking the knee during the Israeli national anthem a few years ago.
No, definitely.
And if we, those are the serial questions that we need to actually get out there, and we need to make the arguments, and we need to inform ourselves to make the arguments.
No, definitely, Mohamed. I think we're going to leave it there with you. But Alie, let me come back to you just in closing. Those 60,000 signatures and letters of support were submitted for renaming to MMC Kabelo Kwamanda. What's the next step? Where to from here?
73,000.
73,000. Yes. Excuse me.
The next step here is that the city is going to run its own process of auditing those public comments and public participation for the next 3 weeks or month. It's important to note that they've never seen this before. They've never received such a large number of comments from the public, so they might need more time to make a recollection for themselves, and also open it to the public for them to audit themselves, because it's a public process and then it should be open and transparent. After that, the committee will make a recommendation to the city council. The city council will take a decision, and then things are in order. We feel we've done all of the work, and we have majority of parties that support Palestine in the city council. So we don't see this going south anyhow. We are winning this.
And Mohammed, just tongue in cheek there. I was talking to Ali yesterday about the fact that this is Sandton Drive, where by I don't know fortune or misfortune you find the American embassy there. The fact that now you're going to have the American embassy on their letterhead say they're based at Leila Khaled Drive in Sandton. I'm sure it's something very very significant also.
We do have all of our concerns and objections to what the United States government does, and at the same time we have to also recognize that there are people in the United States, US citizens, who are appalled by the position that their government and their legislators are taking. We've seen a substantial shift in the way that their student bodies and universities have addressed it. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be something that American citizens are going to be as objected or as offended by as maybe the people who have been, kind of supporting and facilitating the genocide and what the Israelis, complete impunity. I would imagine there are probably thousands or hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans, well, probably millions of American citizens who will look at this and say, this is a recognition of the struggle of the people of Palestine, and we support this. So there are people who are looking at this from the perspective of some degree of maybe symbolism or comeuppance or whatever it may be. But at the same time, we've got to recognize that this is a global struggle and it is not a singular one. And I would imagine that there are going to be, many Americans and people around the world who are going to say this is actually an important point to be able to highlight, that this is South Africa. We do not, accept a double standard that's applied. We do not accept people being protected for the genocide, and we will highlight that, and we will actually recognize those who struggle for freedom and the freedom fighters.
Mm-hmm. One question that I can maybe just pose to you again, Mohammed, is there's been quite a concern regarding solidarity groups here in South Africa. There's a feeling that they are not as united and don't share the common goal and vision. I think maybe Ali, maybe you can jump in also because you're also from a very very prominent solidarity group. Are we missing something when it comes to that regard? The fact that there seems to be fragments of the different solidarity group. Granted, in any struggle, you'll have individual groups and settings. We saw it here during the apartheid struggle. The ANC didn't necessarily agree with maybe say the PAC or all of the other groups. But ultimately, there was one common goal, which was ridding the country of apartheid and ultimately realizing freedom. The solidarity groups in South Africa, we know just how prominent South Africa is when it comes to advocacy for the people of Palestine. But do our solidarity groups share the same vision and goal? And is there unity within the solidarity space in the country? You can start, Mohammed, and then
Okay.
Ali, maybe
So
you can follow up.
I think we do need to recognize that sometimes one of the strategies of those who are trying to influence or counter is to try and divide. And we also know that there is a massive political and propaganda movement that works actively across the world, especially on the issue of Palestine. The Hezbollah, and they pay people to influence and to go out there and break apart any objection. So we've got to actually resist that as organizations. Yes, there are different people who have different kind of understandings about how and what they should do, and it would obviously benefit from us being able to have unity, to have a common, kind of strategy. I think that we're not divided in terms of the objective. We're not divided in terms of what is expected and what is wanted. We may be different in how we go about it and in how we actually spend our resources. I think it is important that we do have unity. It is important that we do have coordination and networking. It is important that we bring people together. And in part, it is also important that people need to accept following others. I think that that's also a huge challenge that, unfortunately, it's become very easy for people to say, I don't like, one particular personality who may be part of something, and or someone who has a maybe an agenda for their own kind of self kind of attention seeking, who might start up these kind of splinter groups. But we've got to find unity, because we've got to be able to make sure that we don't counter ourselves or spend, as we've seen in some instances, more energy kind of undermining what the other is doing than actually dealing with the issue. I think the value and the consequence of the last year has been a renewed kind of sense of objective and urgency, which I think is important. We do need to also, as the public, think a little bit harder about what each party brings to the movement and the struggle and the effort, and who we want to be able to kind of give our support to best represent our objective and the goal. And there are newer ones who do a fantastic job. There are older ones who maybe have kind of need a refresh. And then there are many who have been consistent through a very long time. We've got people who have been, experts on the subject, who have invested years and who know exactly how to do it. We do often see, and as SAMNET, we network with a very wide range of organizations and individuals. We do sometimes see people who, in their passion, with good intention, can sometimes take things in the wrong direction because they don't have the experience or the kind of political nuances on how to address it. Sometimes passion may not be the only tool in the in the fight. You need to be able to have the understanding. You need to be able to have the existing relationships, and you need to actually have connections and interactions with the people on the ground. Speaking to people who are in the Palestinian or from Palestine as well, we very often find that people in other parts of the world, and their comment was that people want to do good things, but sometimes the good things are not actually beneficial to their overall purpose and objective. Sometimes the good things that people try can actually undermine the greater effort, because they don't understand what that means for the people of Palestine. So I think we need to be able to do that. And I would really look forward to the opportunity for our organizations to come together, and to also learn how to follow. Because sometimes we must learn that in certain instances, we need to follow the lead of other people, whether we are SAMNET, whether we are, Africa for Palestine or the BDS movement. There are times when we need to be able to say, on this issue, like probably, on the Leila Khaled renaming, there were one or two organizations, and we need to throw all our effort behind them on that issue, because that's their area of expertise. So is it an issue? Undoubtedly. Can it be addressed? Definitely. Does it actually change the overall goal and objective of the freedom of the people of Palestine, the saving of the lives of the women, children, and all of the people who are being and starving in Gaza at this point in time, dealing with the assault on other countries, and the impunity that this happens, the supply of weapons, all of those things. Those are all objectives which I think every Palestinian organization that is not being undermined externally or influenced externally, every one of them, and we have many of them in South Africa, is absolutely committed to, and we need to give them that support.
Mm-hmm. And you, Alie, your thoughts on this divisions in the Palestinian solidarity space here in South Africa?
Look, we don't see it as division. I mean, when you look at the history of solidarity across all boards, I mean, you look at the Palestinian question, you look at the South African question before that, you look at the Western Sahara question. Um, the solidarity movements, in essence, do their work uh, categorically in sections, I might say. Let me give an example.
Mm.
The the Muslim Judicial Council in Cape Town do fantastic work in Cape Town, mobilizing Muslims in Cape Town. The ulama in Johannesburg, that's fantastic work for Palestine in Johannesburg. We don't necessarily need one body that deals with organizing Muslims in a particular. No, what we see is different organizations doing different work in different sectors works, and we are all pulling towards the same goal. Now, if we were to focus on, I don't like Ali because he's a member of EFF, or I don't like Ali because he's Muslim and not Christian, or I don't, then we're never going to get any work done. We must embrace our diversity, but working with that diversity towards the same goal. Let me give you another example.
Mm.
We have a serious problem in this country of evangelical Christians, Christians who believe that the state of Israel is the Israel in the Bible, is the Israel that God has promised. All right, but this is not the whole sector of Christians in this country, but a majority of them. The South African Council of Churches has undoubtedly done so much work in educating the Christians in their sector, something that I can do. Right? Maybe I'm Hindu, maybe I'm Muslim. I have no business going to church on Sundays and getting to understand what Christians believe in that particular sector. But the South African Council of Churches does, and they do good work in that. So I think we must embrace our diversity in this country, and I think what this past year has taught us is we get the work done. The, we do not have a representative of Israel in this country. The ambassador was withdrawn. We do not have an ambassador in Israel anymore. We've not had for the past 5 years. Um, there's a case at the ICJ of genocide against Israel by the South African state. We are now in the process of advanced process of prosecuting those who participate in the war crimes by the terrorist act. So these are different fronts, and different people are contributing different ways to the struggle. So
Mm.
I think we must embrace the diversity because it gets the work done. From academics to religious leaders to those in politics, we are many in this country that are working towards the same cause. Of course, we might not agree on many issues, and it's fine. It's fine not to agree on other issues. But on this particular issue of Palestine, we are all working towards the same goal, and the result speaks for themselves.
I think we're going to leave it on that note, gentlemen. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. And hopefully, by the time we speak next year around this time, we'll be saying Leila Khaled Drive. Well, formally, it will be formally Sandton Drive, and we'll be celebrating that when it's all said and done.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate
We're
the
very happy
opportunity.
to be here. Ali Komape,
Assalamu
Communications Manager at Africa for Palestine, and Mohamed from the South African Muslim Network, just giving us insights on the various aspects of solidarity. But one outstanding one is the fact that, that push to have the renaming of Sandton Drive to Leila Khaled Drive. And this is obviously honoring resistance and solidarity with the people of Palestine, a position that South Africa has excelled quite well in. Even though there's so much to be done, I think you can't. It goes without saying that unity within the organizations themselves is also very, very imperative. But Ali saying, they are like different fingers pointing at the same moon. Objective is the same. I don't know. You can decide for yourself. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. It's been quite a really interesting one. I'll be back with you for the Thursday edition of News and Views. And later on, don't miss Wednesday nights with Inayat Wadi, which is going live, I think, at 7 this evening. And it'll be another brilliant show with a host of panelists who'll be dissecting the various issues that are currently shaping the world that we're living in today. But from myself, Salalo Maquidir, and the rest of the team, it's goodbye for now.